What's up, everyone? It's Q from RetroQ Gaming, and as usual, here is another Batman story because this shit does not need to die down anytime soon, and they need to be publicly punished and shamed for what they've done. So it's come out in, I won't call it an interview, but two tipsters, one of which is part of some sort of development team involved in Arkham Knight. It doesn't say if they're Iron Galaxy, it doesn't say if they're Rocksteady, or it doesn't say if they're part of a generic Warner Brothers team who gets moved around as needed. But that's one person. The other is a quality assurance tester for Warner Brothers, and they've both come out and slammed Warner Brothers games because apparently Warner Bros. Knew the PC version was a piece of crap for about a year, if not more, and they still chose to release it anyway. So they go on to say that several things, for example, like how a lot of the bugs and glitches and just generic fuck ups we're seeing currently in the PC version were reported over 8 months ago. In the quality assurance teams were just reporting the same thing over and over, and it still wasn't getting fixed despite being reported, and it's just ridiculous. Now, I've always been adamant that publishers know this kind of shit well in advance, and they choose to release a broken game. And in this situation, it's pointed at that Warner Brothers knew, and they released the PC version because they thought, and I quote, "it was good enough." Good enough. Yeah, right. But it really just goes to show. And again, this next point I'm going to bring up, it'll really focus it home a bit as well. Apparently, the quality assurance team for the entire Arkham Knight game was almost 100 people. Nearly 10% of that were PC testers. So let's just say we'll round it off to 100 people as your quality assurance team. 45 of those are put on the Xbox. 45 of those are put on the PlayStation. 10 of those are put on the PC. Yeah, that's right. We got completely screwed. Now, it also goes back to a few other things. Apparently, that even though the 8th generation consoles are x86 architecture, now, one thing I will mention about that is everyone always says the x86 architecture in the new consoles are, they make them almost as easy to develop for as PCs. That's not entirely true. How would I describe it best? It is, okay, the previous generation of consoles were like Xbox 360 was PowerPC, PS3 was its own specialized cell level of architecture, but these consoles, the Xbox One and PS4, because they are x86 or based off it, they are considerably easier compared to the previous gen, but they're nowhere near as easy as everyone makes out to be. And a perfect example of that is that these people who talked to Kotaku, gave their inside info, they've basically confirmed and said that Rocksteady was almost impossible, or Rocksteady felt it was almost impossible to get the game running on consoles at all. Now, not because of like high levels of graphical issues or anything like that, but just because of programming and architecture and coding issues and conflictions. So because of all that, it was almost impossible. Apparently, when the game was shown off behind closed doors at I think it was GDC 2014 last year, the game was the demo that they were showing off was almost unplayable or unwatchable, if you will, because you didn't get a hands on with it. But it was freezing up, it was hitching up, the frame rate was stuttering, it was wild all over the place. And I mean, why is that something to show off? Okay, yeah, fair enough, it represents the current quality and represents the stage of the development in the game, but it's not really a promising point. Now, that was all fairly hard to take seriously at the time because it was a game that was in development, and then of course it shows that the game had been delayed. I think it was like twice more, and for like Well, the first time it got delayed was, what, 6 months? Oh, no, I think it got delayed from the end of 2014 to the start of 2015. And then it got delayed till June. And then it got delayed till later June, if I remember all the delays properly. But I mean, that speaks volumes. If they had to delay a game 8 months just to get it to the state it's in, imagine what it was like back then. I always said the same thing about The Witcher 3 as well. I mean, that game was announced for, God, I can't even remember when it was. I think it was announced for the start of 2014 or maybe even earlier. I think it was actually announced for February 2014, and then it got delayed for like over a year. So could you imagine if they had to release that in the state it was in back then? And this goes for Batman as well. So I mean, why do they do this? I'm always adamant that publishers are just scum out to get your money, out to get as much of your money as possible while doing as little work as possible. And especially in Warner Brothers' case, this seems especially true. Just off the top of my head, we have Batman Arkham Origins. The main reason I bring that one up is, one, it's a Batman game, and two, I personally played it on the PC and had massive issues with it. One of my friends played it. I can't remember the platform he played it on, but it also had massive issues, and his were even worse than mine because his were glitches and bugs to the point where he couldn't finish the game. He couldn't progress and finish the game because of the shitty issues. So, I mean, that's just bullshit. Again, we'll fast forward. Earlier this year, Dying Light came out. Great game, mind you. But when it came out, it wasn't the worst PC port. I mean, it was still an alright PC port. But performance issues were kind of there, but they got fixed fairly rapidly, at least, and it was nowhere near as drastic as some of the other broken games we've seen. So all in all, I would count Dying Light. Like, again, the reason I'm using these games these are Warner Brothers games. Now, okay, yes, Arkham Origins is, I still can't get that fucking Eurogamer thing out of my head. Arkham Orange, god damn it, Origins was developed by I think it was Warner Brothers Montreal, just so people wouldn't forget about Batman while Rocksteady was working on Arkham Knight. And then you have Techland, who made Dying Light. Sorry, it's like 1 a.m. here. I'm tired. Dying Light, yeah. So they made that, and Dying Light. Like I went over a minute ago, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't terrible. Performance-wise, at least anyway, and a lot of the stuff was fixed fairly soon. And then let's jump a little bit further forward again, and we have the current version of Mortal Kombat X, which is an absolute travesty on PC. Between the game deleting itself, trying all this fucked up downloading and preloading and reloading and deloading, and just it was an absolute mess. Performance is an absolute mess from what I understand. I keep up with like broken style games just to see how they've been handled since then. But Mortal Kombat X doesn't look like it has. It looks like it's shown no signs of properly being improved. And at this point, they're just still releasing DLC. So with how Warner Bros. Do shit, I would not expect to see much, compatibility and optimization patches and fixes, just so they can release DLC after DLC and then just say, fuck you, your game is out, it turns on, deal with it. And that brings us back to Arkham Knight, which is, again, in the same boat, because they treat this like shit, and because of it, we all suffer. Well, at least we, the PC community, suffer anyway, and we shouldn't have to. So it's great. I think it's personally great that so many people are so fucking pissed off over Batman. They're so vocal, and the thing that I love about it is that it's covered so much in all the mainstream news sites, and anywhere you go to read gaming news or look at anything, it's all there. Batman is rarely off the front page of anything in its broken aspects. I mean, there's usually a broken article about it, or an article about how broken it is, on the main page almost all the time on at least one or two of everyone's favorite main sites. And that's good because hopefully it will encourage people to stop pre-ordering games, to stop spending money on their games. And I know that because of this whole situation, I tend to treat publishers as an entity, if you will. I treat them as one thing. So now, after this whole thing, anything that is now a Warner Brothers game has now gone from what could potentially be a, oh my god, must buy, or yeah, I'll probably buy that kind of thing. It's now, no matter what platform, what kind of game, what franchise, it's now instantly wait and see. So anything with the Warner Bros. Logo, anything with the Rocksteady logo, and, well, anything with the Iron Galaxy logo was never even a wait and see. That was an avoid completely. But anything that has anything to do with Rocksteady or anything to do with Warner Bros. Games are now, to me, on the wait and see list. I'll give you more examples of why this shit happens. It's because publishers, and they treat PC gamers like shit, and then they just expect us to give them money. My perfect example of this is always Ubisoft. Ubisoft are the perfect example of, I use this all the time, their attitude towards not just gamers, but their attitudes towards, say, the PC community is like 51% and then 49% of the consoles, but just because their attitude is always fuck you, now buy our games. So I mean, yes, they do that to the console users as well, but they also do it to the PC users. The guy in charge of Ubisoft, Yves Guillermo, it's French, so I always mix up the pronunciation with him and Guillermo del Toro, but he's been quoted from, conference calls and meetings and stuff as saying stuff like how they outsource the PC ports of some of their games to Eastern European developers. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Eastern European developers, but what I will say now in a second is that they outsource them to Eastern European developers with little to no PC experience. That's the key issue. It's like they specifically go and find a cheap studio with little to no PC, or even if they have little to no PC experience, and just give them the code and the job of porting it over, and it usually works out much worse in the end. And Yves was also quoted for saying shit like, it's like, oh, forget the PC users, fuck them, they'll pirate it anyway, doesn't matter. So, I mean, when you have someone like that running a company, yes, all your people your consumers who purchase your games are going to be pissed off. I know I personally don't play Ubisoft games anymore. That's not to say I do not buy Ubisoft games, that's true. I do not pirate Ubisoft games, because most people take it when I say it's like, oh, I don't give Ubisoft or EA my money. Most people just assume that means I pirate their games, which is wrong. I don't pirate their games. I don't play their games at all. I don't buy their games. And I'll say it again, I don't pirate their games. I have nothing to do with them. I have nothing to do with their games. I can't remember the last time I played an Ubisoft game, and that's mostly to do with that. It's also to do with how they milk the fuck out of everything. I mean, people say Activision and Call of Duty are bad. I think Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed and some of their other games, but mostly Assassin's Creed, are just so much worse. It's just fucking ridiculous. So Warner Brothers is now on the cusp of that list. It's like on the line of the edge of the page. So one more slight fuck up, which could even be related to Batman, depending on how long this takes and how long it goes on for and how bad and dramatic everything is. It could, something to do with Batman could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but we'll see how that goes anyway. So again, I'm imploring everyone to just, we all know, stop pre-ordering games, especially if it's a PC game, simply because I believe that publishers and developers will not deliver, and I don't want to see everyone screwed out of their money, because it gives PC gaming a bad name, and then we have to go through mass exoduses and mass refunds and all, which yes, gives out the negative publicity that we want, but it's still a bit of a hassle anyway. I know I personally, if I had bought Arkham Knight. My copy of Arkham Knight, it was provided to me by a friend who got a new GPU, and he gave me the code because he didn't want it. So I know if I had paid for Arkham Knight, I would have refunded it, because this is just bullshit. But because it's free, obviously I can't refund it. But I wouldn't even try, because nothing's gonna happen. So just gonna leave it with all that, and it's just bullshit. My tired ramblings have been going on for a while now, so let me know your whole opinion on what you think publishers do and are aware of, and how they treat their customers, because it's fuck them. That's all I can say. Just fuck them. So let me know all that in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter, details in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel while I wait years and years and years for a working Batman Arkham Knight PC port.